If I think about the ways you make me smile, I'd be sitting here and smiling for a while. Although I know I make you cry sometimes, your happiness is ever on my mind. I cannot repay for everything you've done, but my love for you burns brighter than the sun. No matter where my feet and mind may go, my heart will lead to you and you alone. Guyana, Guyana, I'll be holding on to you forevermore. Guyana, Guyana, may the blessings of God never leave your shore. A paradise so wondrous to behold, a work of art, your heart is gleaming gold. They sail the waters, soar above the trees, to find the gem between the mount and seas. Your children know we try though we may fall. We stand united now to heed your call. Our fathers fought the fights for liberty. Forever I'll defend Guyana free. Guyana, Guyana,
Down from your window, no big city lights, just greenery. I don't know what you come for. Listen up, my dear, we're such a man free. Welcome to the land of many faces. Not one, not two, but six different races. You know when the sun kisses your skin, you're in the right place. Guyana, oh, that's my beautiful country. One people, one nation, one destiny. Don't stop for a minute. Come, let me take a walk, my brother, take you. You'll see our landmarks and our monuments. They're so unique. The hybrid structure, lighthouse, the tallest wooden structure, cathedral, 176 tree monuments, and the beautiful city hall. You know with the wind in your hair, you're in the right place. Guyana, oh, that's my beautiful country. One people, one nation, one destiny. Look down from your window, no big city lights, just greenery. I don't know what you come for. Listen up, my dear, we're such a man free. Welcome to the land of many faces. Not one, not two, but six different races. You know when the sun kisses your skin, you're in the right place. Guyana, oh, that's my beautiful country. One people, one nation, one destiny.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Please bear with us for about 2 minutes more. We're trying to put a document on the screen so that you can follow along during our press conference. Thank you.
We stand united now to heed your call. Our fathers fought the fights for liberty. Forever I'll defend Guyana free. Guyana, Guyana, I'll be holding on to you forevermore. Guyana, Guyana, may the blessings of God never leave your shore. Guyana, Guyana, I'll be. If I think about the ways you make me smile, I'd be sitting here and smiling for a while. Although I know I make you cry sometimes, your happiness is ever on my mind. I cannot repay for everything you've done, but my love for you burns brighter than the sun. No matter where your feet and mine may go, my heart will lead to you and you alone. Guyana, Guyana, I'll be holding on to you forevermore. Guyana, Guyana, may the blessings of God never leave your shore.
Are we ready?
Paradise so wondrous to behold. A work of art, your heart is gleaming gold. They sail the waters, soar above the trees, to find the gem between the mount and seas. Your children know we try though we may fall. We stand united now to heed your call. Our fathers fought
I'm waiting for
fights
it
for liberty. Forever I'll.
Good morning once again, and welcome to the Ministry of Education's 2024 Annual Press Conference. I'd like to recognize the Honorable Minister of Education, Priya Manik-Chan, our CEO, Saddam Hussein, our DCOs, our ACOs, other senior officers within the Ministry of Education, and of course, members of the media. Thank you all for joining us here today. We will start today's program with Minister Manik-Chan reading our annual report from 2024, followed by our question and answer segment. Minister?
Thank you. Good morning. Very happy to be here. Happy New Year to all of you and to all of us watching. When they say I'll read something, it makes me nervous because I don't see that well these days, age. But I hope we're pulling it up on the screen also so that you can follow. I am also joined by the Chief Education Officer, Deputy Chiefs, Assistant Chief Education Officers, and other senior officers of the ministry who will be happy to interact with you when that time comes. The Ministry of Education has had an extremely remarkably successful year that we're very proud of. We are very proud that we were able to, and feel great pride in the fact that we were able to deliver as much as we have, not in a boastful way, in a way that speaks to gratification and humbleness. We have had to overcome challenges that you and the nation doesn't remember exist, and that's how it should be. We inherited and came into office when we had one of the worst challenges any education sector has ever seen historically, and that is the COVID-19 lockdown, where schools were closed, and for the first time we were forced to do something that we'd never done before, educate the nation's children without being face-to-face. And our community, our education community, teachers, parents, students, pupils, the ministries of education's officers, regional education officers, and the government structure supported that period in a way that saw us defying the predictions that were made by the international financial institutions and UNICEF and UNESCO and so on. What were those predictions? One, that we would see severe learning loss, and two, that we would see remarkable numbers of early school leavers. Fancy thing to say, a lot of dropouts. And we have defied that by making sure we implemented several changes that were going to minimize. We didn't expect it to reverse, but minimize that happening. And so we've overcome that challenge as a people, as a nation, and we have proceeded to embrace opportunities, all with a view to making sure our current learners, those in nursery, primary, and secondary, and those who will leave, can benefit from the thriving Guyana that we see being built out before us, that can compete in the world wherever they go in various fields, that can do whatever it is that their mind and their parents and their desires lead them to do, that their God has called them to do. And so we're very happy this morning to report to you on main things. If I were to stand here and tell you everything we've done over the last year, we ain't going home. So we're not doing that. We're doing some very main item things that touched large numbers of persons across the board. And then we would be open for questions that you have. And we'd be happy. I suspect those questions, if you have any, would take us into maybe areas that we did not touch. And we would be very happy to be able to do that. Our focus areas would be, just give me a moment to grab that. And that would be what we're scrolling on the screen for too. Our focus areas would be infrastructure, teacher training. And before I begin, I want to say that everything we do is premised on two documents. One, our education sector plan, and two, the manifesto promises made by the People's Progressive Party Civic when they were campaigning and asking people to vote for them. Why? Because that's where we laid out what we want to do, and that's where the people of Guyana, that's what the people of Guyana gave us the mandate to do. So we have a duty to deliver on those. So we are looking at access We're looking at quality. We're looking at making sure resources are given to make sure we achieve the access and quality we're talking about, and we're making sure we look at trying to produce children who are ready for the job market. There's clearly some excitement over here. That we could settle down on. You're very distracting. Infrastructure. So pulling up on infrastructure development, if you look at this area, so let me just tell you why this is happening. We wanted it fancier, and we wanted you to be able to follow, and we wanted to be fully transparent, because you don't really see presentations like this. The minister would ordinarily just stand at a podium and speak and tell you what they want. So I'm not sure why. So sometimes to get fancier, first time takes a little bit more effort. So I think that's what's happening here. Infrastructural development, we've spent over the last 20 to 2024, 25. We've spent over the last from 2020 to 2024, we've spent $31 billion, $529 million, $228, and $360. I think that's not the updated one that they have there. In new construction, we have spent $13 billion, 13 plus. In reconstruction, $7 billion. In major extensions, $8 billion, and in major rehabilitation, $2 billion, and that spreads across Guyana. It's broken down as follows. In Region 1, we've spent $817 million. In Region 2, $3.6 billion. In Region 3, $3.5 billion. In Region 4, $8.3 billion. In Region 5, $897 million. In Region 6, $751 million. In Region 7, $2.4 billion. In Region 8, $1.8 billion. In Region 9, $2.8 billion. In Region 10, $825 million. And in Georgetown, $5.3 billion. You would notice that I'm not doing the cents and millions out of deep fear that I call that figure incorrectly, as I am known to do. This includes the building of new nursery, primary, and secondary schools across the country. In fact, on the issue of secondary schools, one of our promises was that we would deliver universal secondary education. And you have seen for yourself, because you live here where I live, the major expansion happening in secondary education across the country. So these are the secondary schools that we are currently building. In Region 1, we are building or rebuilding 5 secondary schools. Could I have my phone? Those would be the Northwest Secondary, Hosororo Secondary, Quebana Secondary, Waramuri Secondary, and Matthews Ridge Secondary. Almost all of those have also dormitories and teachers' quarters being built with them. In Region 2, we rebuilt the Abram Zool Secondary, and we will be rebuilding the Cotton Field Secondary at the same location without using the field, because I know there were some sensitivities around that. In Region 3, we built already the De Willem Secondary. We finished the Westminster Secondary. We are building Neems Secondary, Tushin Secondary. Those are all large schools. In Region 4, we finished Good Hope Secondary, Yarracabra Secondary, and we're currently building Prospect Secondary and Caneville Secondary. In Region 5, there's no need for a secondary school, but we're looking at transportation to get our children to secondary schools. In Region 6, we're building the Oriala Siparuta Secondary in Oriala. In Region 7, we're building Philippi Secondary, Jawala Secondary, Isano Secondary, and Carao Secondary. In Region 8, we're building Kopinang Secondary, Maikobi Secondary, and Monkey Mountain Secondary. In Region 9, we're building 7 secondary schools: Tapachinga Secondary, Karasabay Secondary, Katoka Secondary, Napi Secondary, Mawaranao Secondary, Yupakari Secondary, and Tapachinga Secondary. I think I gave you the 8 there. In Region 10, we're building Wairuni Secondary, and we have finished the Hururu Secondary. That school, that's in the river. In Georgetown, we are building or rebuilding North Ramveld Secondary, Christchurch Secondary, St. Mary's Secondary, and we finished the St. George's School of Sciences. You would also know, and if we were only to look at Georgetown, because you know that area well, that we've done major extensions, including the finishing off of St. Rose's, which was demolished sometime in 2016, 2017, and never rebuilt. So we finished St. Rose's. We've extended the Bishop's High. We've extended Queen's College and given them 6 form blocks. We are going to be putting a new block at the St. Stanislaus College. We're going to, we have extended significantly East Rheinveld. We've extended significantly St. Winifred's Secondary. These are all major extensions where we were able to accommodate entire levels. For example, the whole level 7 or the entire grade 6 form class. And so infrastructure sounds, I don't like using it in dollars and cents, because for me that's not what's important. For me, what is important is the seats we're offering to our children. And to give you an idea of what we're doing, currently in Region 9, you have 4 secondary schools. You have St. Ignatius, Anai, Aishalton, and Sand Creek. That's what you have in Region 9. In 4 years, we're building 7 secondary schools. So I hope you understand the magnitude of what we've undertaken. When the PPP came into office in 1992, we had 3 secondary schools in the hinterland regions, 1, 7, 8, and 9. One was in the northwest. One was in the St. Ignatius. One was at St. Ignatius. And one was at Bartica, if you consider Bartica hinterland. I don't, because it's right there as a gateway. Those were the 3. When we left office in 2015, we had 14 more secondary schools built in the hinterland, 1, 7, 8, and 9. And no secondary school was started or finished, not only in the hinterland, but anywhere in Guyana. We are currently building 37 secondary schools across this country. We currently have, so to take you to the impact of what we're trying to do, and the mathematicians amongst us could do that calculation, for all the time that Guyana existed, we've had 116 secondary schools when I came into office in 2020. We are now building more than 1/3 of that at one term. In Irfan Ali's first term, we're building 37, when for the whole of Guyana's existence, we've had 116. So the magnitude of it is what I hope you understand now. Let's take the building of a school right at Caneville or Prospect or Nimes. What does that mean for us? When I came in, Sadia Kadir, our now ACEO exams, but then superintendent of exams, very quiet, very efficient, wholly efficient officer, said to me, "You're going to have some problems." And I said, "Well, hit me up." because we were in the middle of COVID, so I thought it was COVID problems. And she said, no, we're about to announce these results, and we don't have about 3,000 spaces for children in Georgetown and Region 3. So what do you mean we don't have 3,000 spaces? She says we simply don't have seats and spaces to put these children in. We don't have it in Region 3 in Georgetown. So we had to look for, you may remember the tents at East Rumveld. You may remember, which is still happening, community centers at Potentia, looking to rent buildings in Reed and Hoop. Right on the East Bank, as we speak, children are in primary tops. That's not a place we want to be. That's not a place we need to be in. And we're not people who wring our hands. We're people who find solutions. Of course, buildings and getting to the place of the completion of a building is a whole process that involves so many people that it's very challenging. The procurement process is long, and then working with contractors to complete things in the timeline that they say they're going to complete things in is very, very long. In addition to the secondary schools, though, we are building primary schools and nursery schools where none existed. According to the United Nations, we've already achieved universal primary education. So we are, although we have that, we are looking to make sure we either rebuild where necessary, such as the St. Gabriel's Primary, old, dilapidated, needs a new school, so we rebuild that, but also looking to build new primary schools where none existed. For example, in a village called Krokrana in Region 9, or Toka in Region 9, where the primary school didn't exist before, but children were attending primary, but very far away from where they are. And we have gotten a complete assessment of where we need nursery schools, and are also feverishly working on trying to bring in universal nursery education during this time also. Another major feature for us was teacher training, which you have heard me speak about before, but which is worth repeating. That would be CPCE, teacher training, the second. So we have trained over the last 4 years 4,378 teachers. And this is more than double of what we trained between 2015 to 2020. But that's not the only success story in this. I want to tell you about this program. When I came into office, the college was closed, as was every other learning institution because of COVID. But there was no prospect of when they would open, because CPC has only ever been, since they began, in-person education. They had distance, but distance education meant they're distant in the regions that they're in. There was no technology-infused education. And I said to Miss Viola Rowe, who we've happily engaged again after her retirement to do some other good work for us, I said to her, Viola, there's going to come a time when there's no COVID, nobody's wearing masks, we're allowed to gather, such as today. And at that time, we will need teachers. If we don't train them now, we'll have none then. So we got to find a way to train. Let's take this college online. And that was about, if I were to look back at my Facebook page, that was probably early September. And we were supposed to open in January. But going online is not an easy exercise. So I think we opened in April of 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And we saw remarkable things. The college hitherto was only ever able to admit at any, or graduate in any given year, the highest number of 535 graduates. That means 535 newly trained teachers in the system. Now you're seeing us graduating 2,000 and 4,000 teachers. That means a higher quality and qualitatively, and a higher number quantitatively. So you got more teachers and you have better trained teachers. But that's not as great as that story is. There are some other smaller stories here that will have you understand the impact of this. There is something called TTC, Trained Teacher Certificate, which you would have to do 3 years for, and then go to UG and do 3 more years to get your degree in education. And when we started, almost all hinterland teachers were doing the TTC because that is all that was accessible to them. So hinterland teachers, which in the majority are made up of our Amerindian brothers and sisters, had to spend 6 years to get a degree. And they had to leave their families and come out to do that. So what we had was a lot of untrained teachers in the hinterland, because you have to leave your 3-month-old baby and come here and spend 6 years to get a degree. That was not what was happening on the coast. On the coast, it was 4 years. As soon as we opened up the program, the associate degree program to the hinterland, we saw an immediate, almost zeroing of the numbers of teachers who are doing the TTC. If you see numbers there, it's people who are graduating from before on in these years. So what you saw, what that story tells is teachers of the hinterland were always capable of doing the degree program. They were always qualified to do the degree program, but they had no access to that degree program, which means they were forced to either take longer to graduate and enjoy the benefits of a graduate, 2, not pursue the program so that they couldn't get the benefits of being a trained teacher, and then 3, the children of the hinterland could not benefit from trained teachers. Now, if you look at the story, you'll see in the regional numbers, you'll see the number of graduates for Region 1, grand total 328. I wish we had the comparison there about what it might have been in, say, 2019. In Region 7, I can't see because the flower is blocking me. But you're seeing the numbers there that show very clearly. In Region 7, we have 177 trained teachers over the last 4 years. In Region 8, 68. In Region 9, 263. Those are numbers that are very different from your 2019 numbers, which we would be happy to share with you afterwards during the question and answer period. So we also asked the University of Guyana to take their program online. By their program, I mean their degree program. And so there's no need for teachers to ask for leave to exit. Before, all the teachers would know that only 2 or 3 of them could go to UG at any given point. So if you have a school with 60 teachers, which many of our schools have, 3 could go to UG. And everybody else has to wait until they finish UG before 3 more could go. And then another 3 more, and then another 3 more. The teachers amongst us know that story and know it very well. So now we have said everybody could go because it's online. So there are no limits. You could have an entire school going to the University of Guyana at the same time for an education degree because it's not interfering with their teaching hours and their contact hours with children. That now means that we're not stopping anybody. We have created the environment where we're promoting people's learning. And once you get a degree, you have all kinds of other benefits that we'll get to just now that President Ali announced. So our teacher training story has been a really remarkable success successful story for us here in Guyana. And I'd be happy to tell you that because we're online, we have been approached by at least 2 Caribbean countries, colleagues who have asked about how they could, their teachers, much smaller numbers than ours, could benefit from this online training that we have. And that is something we're currently exploring with them because, of course, you know, Guyana, once we have something, we share it. The next topic that I'd like to introduce is the Because We Care cash grant. As you know, this was abolished under the APNU. Over the last 4 years, from 2020 to 2024, parents have received in their pockets and in their homes $26,567,468,000. You can see it raised from $19,000 in 2021 to $45,000 in 2024. Nursery children got $5 billion, $5.3 billion. Primary, $13.2 billion. Secondary, $7.9 billion. My very young and positive staff in the PR department did not want to make this a negative report. I am not so young, so let us talk a little bit about that. This grant was abolished, so they don't have the zeros next to 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, although I wanted it there. This grant was abolished by the APNUAFC on the ground that they couldn't sustain it and that they would deliver to every student breakfast, buses, boats, boots, and bicycles. And, well, you know the story. The grant was abolished. There was no, I don't know if your children got boats and buses, because we'll come to that just now. And breakfast was given to 3 schools in Region 6. And 65 schools in all. No school in Region 2 received breakfast on the breakfast program that cash grant was abolished to give. Schools were getting the previous hot meal. Certain schools were getting hot meals. That continued. But nobody in Region 2, not a single child, benefited from a new breakfast program. Not a single child on the East Coast, East Bank, benefited from a new breakfast program. And here's the killer. Not a single child in Region 10 benefited from the new breakfast program. Don't worry with 1, 7, 8, and 9, and so they were invisible. So we have moved from almost nobody benefiting from the breakfast program to every single primary school on the coast benefiting from the breakfast program at grades 4, 5, and 6, and some at grade 3, all at grade 3. So grades 3, 4, 5, and 6 are benefiting from the Breakfast for Success program. All children all across the country are from nursery to grade 2, that's our early childhood years, are receiving some form of nutrition, whether it is fortified biscuits and fruit juices or cassava bread and peanut butter, depending on where you are, or hot meals in the villages. All of our primary school children in the hinterland communities are receiving a hot meal. And we have also added that all dorm children, whether resident or not, are receiving a meal. Now let me tell you what that means. Before that addition, the children, you have a school. Some children live in the dorm and some go home in the afternoons. The children who lived in the dorm would receive lunch. The children who go home in the afternoons would not receive lunch from us. And that was an impractical thing because in those villages where you have dorm schools, going home is far. So you couldn't go home for lunch and come back. And sometimes they had to leave early to get to school because of the distance. We are now giving all the secondary school children in dorm schools lunch. So everybody's benefiting from that lunch period. So we didn't only restore the Because We Care cash grant, We didn't only make sure it increased, but we also gave breakfast. Buses and boats, if I can pull that up. So from 2023 to 2024, not 2023, from 2020 to 2024, we have bought and delivered to various communities 94 boats and 58 buses. And this does not include all the communities that have used their LCDS funds to buy either buses or boats for the education sector. Comparatively speaking, and again, this is young people not wanting to get, comparatively speaking, and this is the breakdown for buses and boats, but comparatively speaking, the buses provided by the APNU previous to, because that they abolished the grant for, was 34 buses and 28 boats. So you abolished the grant and said you would give breakfast and boats and buses. They didn't give the breakfast, as we just established, and as the people of Guyana know. And they gave 34 buses and 28 boats for the whole 5-year period. We have restored the cash grant. We are giving every child breakfast, and we have bought 94 buses and 58 boats. Sorry, the opposite. 94 boats and 54 buses, 58 buses in a 4-year period. These things call for political will. Do you want to do it? Do you believe people are entitled to this service? Do you believe you should work hard to deliver this service? That's why you see us doing these things and able to do it, because we didn't come from a different country. We came from the same Guyana. We don't eat differently, so we're not using the Energizer Bunny or anything that is different from what the APNU AFC ate. We just have the political will and desire to do it, and we understand that when we make commitments, we must honor them. And that's what our entire program in education is about. I'll move on now to our goal scholarships. We have so far granted 29,758 scholarships for Guyanese people, young and old, but mostly young, to study in foreign universities at no cost to themselves because the government of Guyana is paying for it. They are on degree programs, master's programs, and PhDs. They're doing certificates, and they're doing postgrads and postgraduate diplomas. And if you go back, if you look at this regional breakdown, you'll see that it's not Georgetown people alone studying. So don't feel too special there, you Georgetowners. 814 from Region 1 who otherwise could not have accessed the foreign university to be able to study for their degrees and masters and PhDs. 2,702 from Region 2, 4,431 from Region 3, 13,002 from Region 4, 1,842 from Region 5, 2,983 from Region 6, 918 from Region 7, 605 from Region 8, 700 from Region 9, 1,761 from Region 10. And I want to, before we move on to the next slide, remind you when we first introduced this, they only doing that for their people. How people in Region 8 can study, them ain't got internet, them ain't got devices. Well, 605 people are getting degrees, masters, or PhDs from foreign universities. We are not people who find reasons why things can't happen. We try to make sure we give opportunities, and of course, people have to avail themselves of those opportunities. But the bigger story on the Goal Scholarship is that, and if you look at the gender breakdown, and I did it deliberately, 21,436 of these scholarship awardees are women. Some of who are home looking after their children while their children are young and preparing themselves for the workforce with degrees and masters when these children start going to school. And 8,322 men who didn't have to leave their jobs to come and study. They can stay working to look after their families as they upgrade and upskill themselves. But the bigger story here is in a smaller number. The bigger story is in our GROW students. GROW, it would be reflected at the SCQF level 6 and GED. And if you add those two numbers, it would give you 6,914. Did I do that right? 6,900. See, Leon would be proud of me. 6,914 young people. Let me tell you what that is. These are people who were unable to finish high school for whatever reason, dropped out, couldn't finish it, or wasn't successful at high school. And GROW is a program we introduced that, well, GROW is an acronym for Get Ready for Opportunities to Work. And the program was introduced so that you can get high school level qualifications. So anyone that does the GED or the SCQF or the BFP would be able to finish high school and then enter tertiary education. And I am told that 80% of those who finish this program are now doing a degree program in a foreign university. So listen to that person's story. I had to drop out of school because my father died and my mother couldn't look after all of us, so she had to pick who she was sending to school. And I never thought I would be able to get a degree or go to a university. And then if I thought I could do it, I couldn't afford it because I had to start working early to help my mother. So now the government came in and allowed you to finish this program. And not only finish this program, go to a foreign university in your own time to get a degree. Those are the stories that are real. These are the human lives we're changing. So I don't like to stand and talk too much about numbers because these are people we're talking about. And many of you know them. They're your nieces and nephews. They're your neighbors. They're people going to church with you. They're people who you know had or thought had their life mapped out for them because they couldn't finish high school. But we were wrong. We were wrong. They have a new life and new opportunities with the GOAL and the GROW program. I'll move on now to teachers' benefits. Again, something we promised. You are aware that our agreement with the Guyana Teachers Union had expired, and that despite dozens of recorded meetings, we were unable to, and in the process of having negotiations, we were met with a countrywide teacher strike, not participated by all, but by enough to have affected us all. As a result of which, we have entered into a new MOU with the Guyana Teachers Union for the next 3 years, where teachers are receiving salaries and benefits, including allowances and duty-free, and increases on allowances that they had enjoyed before. to the point where, and this was signed on the instruction of the General Council to the executives of the Guyana Teachers Union, and is in full effect. Let's go through some of those. In 2024, we spoke about the age thing. There was a President Ali announced, in 2024 there's a 10% increase. In 2025 there will be an 8% increase. In 2026 a 9% increase, and this would be adjusted for higher if public servants receive more. The great thing with teachers is they don't have to wait till the end of the year to have it all added on. From January, this is added on to their salaries from the beginning. So they're not, unlike when we get an increase at the end of the year and then they give you a retroactive pay, teachers are enjoying this as we go along. Then you have the remote area incentive. That is if you live in the hinterland or work in the hinterland. It used to be $9,000. It is now raised to $23,000. That's a 156% increase. Doctoral degree holders, and these are all announced by President Ali, we've increased them from $30,000 to $32,000 per month. Masters and degree holders from $10,000 to $22,000 a month. Postgraduate from $6,000 to $7,000 per month. Education certificate holders from $4,000 to $5,000 per month. And education management course holders, $5,000 monthly. Now I want to point out something on this. More than 2/3 of our teachers are currently studying on GOAL or other government-sponsored programs, or are in the college. So that means very shortly they'll be, if they're not yet benefiting, they'll be benefiting from these allowances, again, by a platform the government gave them to go and get yourself qualified at no cost to yourself. We also have hardline allowances increased to $5,000. Station allowance increased to $5,000. Clothing allowance increased from $8,000 to $15,000. Duty-free concessions, a 50% increase from $100 to $150 annually. And teachers with substantive senior roles, we've also lessened the category of, or widened the category of teachers who can benefit from this. Scholarships has a 100% increase from $50 to $100 annually. Reemployment after retirement. Teachers rehired after retirement will be paid at their last salary scale before retirement, and that was always a problem with getting back teachers into the system who were very good. We are going to pay teachers for marking and supervising SBAs. I believe the ministry is currently working out with the GTU how that is going to roll out. Salary increments for non-graduates, 2 additional salary increments after 3 years of service. It will benefit over 9,000 teachers. Impact on coastal teachers, they'll receive a 10% salary increase, salary increments, and increased allowances. And there's also an impact on hinterland teachers. So that is one of the promises we made, that we would increase and improve on the emoluments of teachers in the system, and we have done that. We also knew that teachers had complaints. I'm going to the Teachers Resources Grant. You're very good. So we are, over the last year and a half, we've disbursed $3.7 billion to schools for the usage by teachers. And let me tell you what this grant is about. Teachers complain to us, and you must have known it as parents or aunts and uncles, as well as you would have heard it in the various complaints, that they have to spend their own resources to get aids and chalk and so on for the classroom. which means they had less income. And we know that they would ask us all with a list to bring these things to the class: toilet paper, Dettol, cardboard, scissors. You got the list, right? Because I got them too. There's no longer any need to give a list appearance, and there's no longer any need for teachers to go into their pockets and expend for resources in the classroom, because we're now giving every school in the hinterland, it's $5,500 per student given to the school, not the student. And on the coastland, it's $4,500 per student given to the school, not the student, amounting to $3.7 billion in resources. What are the resources? Chalk, staple machine, crayons, Play-Doh, cardboard, paper, printer, computer, water, dispensers. In fact, while this was a really good initiative and meant to do everything good, what started happening in schools started, transformers started blowing, because the schools were buying too many electrical items that couldn't be taken off by the capacity of the current electrical capacity in the building. There was, as you can see, this was evenly distributed, and there was a minimum value. So if there was a very small school, which we have in the hinterland, where it wouldn't make a difference if we were to give 5-5, there was a minimum value that we gave to the school, where it would ensure, I think it was $220,000 minimum, to make sure that although they don't have the number of children, I mean, you still have to clean, you still have to put up the aids, you still have to do all of that. And so this grant was specifically to help teachers be more effective in their classroom. You don't hear a lot about it, because we have also asked schools to open bank accounts. So we go to the bank, and at the click of a finger, well, not my finger, because I don't have that jurisdiction, but the governor's finger, we send off these grants to more than 500 of our schools without having to walk around with cash and share it out. They already have or will have in their bank accounts for January, for this term here, the money they need by next week. Those who have the bank accounts, and the rest, well, we have to take it to them. Dormitories. You are aware that in the construction build-out, we have been, and if you were paying attention to the newspapers, that we have been advertising for the construction, reconstruction, or extensive rehabilitation to dormitories in Guyana. So we have 14 dorms. Currently, 10 are under serious rehabilitation. Sometimes that means taking down the entire dorm and building it back, such as at Paramakatoy, Port Kaituma, Paramakatoy. We've spent or are spending $6.4 billion to do that. And these dorms are being rebuilt at the standard, or renovated to the standard of a professional report done by Dean and Partners, which suggested what the standard should be. And we're trying very hard in most cases, well, in all cases, to meet all the major parameters of the requirements and standards set out in those dorms. So let's look at that for a minute. The Northwest student dorm renovation extension will cost us $362 million. Santa Rosa Maruca students dorm renovation, $256 million. Matthews Ridge student dorm, 447, but that's dorm, multi-purpose hall, dining room, and so on. Port Kaituma dorm, $146 million. Wakapau students dorm, $199 million. Aurora Secondary, where children from the Pomeroon, as well as lake areas on the Essequibo Coast stay. We are spending $119 million to renovate that. The Springland Secondary Dorm, $310 million. 3 Miles Students Residence in Bartica, $329 million. 7th Avenue, Bartica, $423 million. Warmadown, construction of multipurpose hall and kitchen, $360 million. Jawala Students Dorm construction, $310 million. Paramakatoy extension and renovation, $620 million. Monkey Mountain Dormitory, $281 million. Kopinang Dorm, $149 million. Anai Secondary, $781 million. Is that accurate? We have to check that. Ishalton Dormitory, $47 million. Mawaranao Dorm, $78 million. St. Ignatius, $324 million. Kokwani, $123 million. Kokwani Boys, $106 million. Linden Foundation Dormitory, $449 million. So these are all publicly tendered construction projects. The designs were based on standards developed by a report we commissioned in the ministry to determine what would be best for children who are living in dormitories. This is 10 of 14. Those remaining to be done will be done this year. So we are going out and engaging in the procurement process of all of these. There are a few things we did not promise in the manifesto. Before I move on to those few things, let me tell you a little bit about TVET, our technical vocational education and training policy. A lot has been done in this area, but you don't know about that, and that will change shortly. A lot you will hear in easy to understand language what we are doing in this area. So we've developed a new TVET policy. We have completed a tracer study which shows us where kids go, and what we found is, for the most part, the children who do TVET education in high schools and otherwise end up in a skills field earning, and some other interesting data from that, interesting in a very good way, from that tracer study. We've reviewed the grade 7 to 9 TVET curriculum. We've expanded the CVQ. CVQ is the Caribbean Vocational Qualifications Program from 4 schools to 25 schools. And from 4 programs to 25 programs, and we've increased it from 9 secondary schools, implementation of those programs, to 78 secondary schools. What is this program? This is a program where it's modular in approach, where you get to do it and do it and do it in a practical way until you get it right. So it focuses a lot on what you know SBAs to be, a very hands-on approach to learning a particular skill, whether it's food preparation or welding or masonry or electrical engineering. Well, not engineering, electrical installation. We've developed a TVET management information system. We're commissioning new TVET centers. You would know that we did the Friendship one on Region 3 and Mabaroom in Region 1, and we have one in Bartica, St. Ignatius, Hopetown, and Bedford-Wachting left to be commissioned, and I'm told that I should be able to do that by the end of this month. We had some electrical installation issues that we're resolving there. We're training more than 184 TVET pedagogues, that's teachers, as assessors across the country. We've issued 781 SCCP certificates in 2024. We are strengthening partnerships with private agencies and a whole host of other things, created a digital TVET platform. There's a page 2 to this, because when you ask Ritesh Tulram for successes, he doesn't stop. And page 2 has more lists. Ritesh, as you may know, is our deputy chief for TVET. And you have Mr. Chinadu. And if I'd asked him, we would have been here till tomorrow, because he has a list too of the things that he has done. I've been talking for a long time. There are many things that we didn't promise in the manifesto that we've done. We're about to launch a literacy movement, and I'm calling it a movement. In the back there, you see Stembiso Grant, our ACO secondary, our ACO literacy, who is running that program for us. And what they have done in that department is some amazing work, where they created material for teachers and students, pupils and students, from nursery to primary to secondary. And then I will tell you just now, but after. And so it's an across-level literacy movement, where our aim is to make sure by grade 4, every child is literate, meaning every child can read and understand what they are reading. The material is currently in print, very small unit that did that. All Guyanese. The material is currently in print and is going to be finished by the end of January for launch in for distribution in February. Mrs. Ali, whom you know better as the president's mother, is also a literacy expert who worked at NSERD. Well, she's a teacher for her entire life. She worked at NSERD for many, many years. And one of the things we asked her voluntarily to do earlier on in this administration was to prepare for us an adult literacy document, because that was one of her specialties. So we're going to be we couldn't use it by itself. Now that we have this, we're going to be incorporating that work to make sure it's not just school children who are benefiting from this, but also adults in the society who feel they need some help with reading and writing. And we're going to be rolling that out nationally across the country using Mrs. Ali's paper. Well, it wasn't just a paper, it was paper with resources that she had prepared. We've also, in support of that, but also as a pet project of mine, started up libraries for primaries, where we bought libraries for every primary school. A library is, of course, a collection of books. I'm not telling you we bought buildings, we bought books. Really nice stuff, like Harry Potter and Diary of a Wimpy Kid and Captain Underpants and Junie B and Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, and a whole host of books, really nice books that I know, Babysitter's Club, that I know my own children read at those ages, and we've put them in primary school. So we've given, or are in the process of distributing now, to every single primary school. That's 459 primary schools all across Guyana, public primary schools, of course. 154,224 books, something never before we have done. These are storybooks that are trendy and trending. Books can change your life. We're also doing that for secondary schools. So right now we have bought for 150 secondary schools, 16,440 books. But that's not the end. These were just the classics, and that's what we had money last year to buy. We're buying more this year. When I say the classics, I'm talking about books like Anne of Green Gables and Wuthering Heights and the Austens, Jane Austen, and those books. And that was for me this for me is going to be hugely enriching for children. You could really change your life if you start reading. And if you are parents struggling with the competition of the device, you know the struggle is real. It's easy parenting. You could park them with a device and don't feed them, bathe them, or look at them. But we gotta force ourselves to do more. And so getting them into these books would be something that we really, really have to do. Mathematics, we have begun a mathematics intervention program, and that is, so what happened? The Caribbean Examinations Council this year announced very timidly and disappointingly, that the entire region had seen a significant drop in mathematics results. In fact, it was a 7% of an already bad figure that was reduced in the mathematics results. CXC, I had a meeting, or the CXC had a meeting in September, October. And they have a plan, and their plan will start in September of 2026. And their plan is to have a modular approach. Guyana is not waiting until 2026 because we'll have entire generations finishing without the benefit of this plan. So we introduced our own math intervention, something we did in 2012 or 2013 also, and it worked. What is that? We're giving to every child a scientific calculator, geometry set, all the relevant textbooks, graph book, and past papers organized by topics. We are also, and I'll tell you about those just now, we also have Leon Beaton, who you may all know by now, on our television channel and Facebook and every other forum we have, teaching mathematics lessons, where if you follow him and your child were to do the topics with him and the exercises he gives afterwards that you can find in the textbooks that you have in your book bag, you will be able to pass mathematics. And we have also hired monitors to go into the schools. Now, why did we do that? We found, and our research said, that when children have to borrow a calculator on the morning of the exam, or a geometry set, or C-graph paper for the first time, they're struggling with how to use it rather than trying to do their mathematics. And so we wanted to give every fourth former and fifth former those resources so that they are familiar and familiarize themselves with usage of the material. Then we gave the textbooks, so that this particular textbook we're using is from an author named Raymond Tosi, who incidentally is a Guyanese man but living in Trinidad. And the benefit of his book, I am told, because I myself don't like mathematics, the benefit of his book is that he has dozens and dozens of exercises on the same topic. And that is why it is loved in the Caribbean, because mathematics, once you do it and do it and do it, you're going to get it right. And the past papers, we have organized not just past papers, but past papers by topic, so that if you're doing algebra, you could go there and answer all the algebra questions, because sometimes you think you know something until you begin to answer. And you realize, I really don't know this. And then you have to go back and do it. And so this, we expect to see an increase in our results this year, or at least next year, by next year. What we know is that the last time we introduced this program, in the schools that we introduced the program, we saw a 10 to 12% increase in pass rates at the schools at which the programs were introduced. This is not a Ministry of Education. We are doing everything we can do. We're giving all the resources. We are giving the Leons. We have gotten a new math head at NSERD. We have staffed the department with experts. But this requires input from teachers and the home. You have to make sure your children are working 4 or 5 exams. They have the book in the bag. So it can't be you ain't got a book, or you ain't got a calculator, or you ain't got a graph book, or you ain't got the geometry. So you have everything. You mightn't know what they're doing, because I could tell you as a parent, I don't know. So you could do it and I can't mark it because I have no clue whether it's right or wrong or what process I must use. But you could sit down and watch them do 5 sums and take it back to Miss in the morning. So that practice, if children were to practice and do a lot of that practice, we are absolutely certain they will pass. And we are going school to school, meeting with parent bodies and asking them to understand what their role is in this. We're also saying, if you can't afford lessons, we're giving you free lessons on the Learning Channel, on the radio, on the app that we've created. I mean, we have a QuizMe website where we have uploaded all the questions, the paper 1 type questions, where you just have to go in there and answer, and right away you'll get back your answer about whether it's wrong or right. So there's very little else the ministry can do. It is now over to you, my dear students. It is now over to you, my dear parents. It's now over to you, our hardworking teachers. We are here holding your hands, and anything you need, we'll just call us, we'll get it. Come to you. You don't know how to teach a topic, that's fine. Why did we do the monitors? Because as much as teachers work hard, we found that some teachers simply can't teach a topic. You're great with algebra, you're horrible with fractions. I hope fractions is not part of algebra. Or you're great at the number line, but you're awful at profit and loss. So the monitor can help. The monitors are experts. They can help you teach that topic, and they can retrain you right there on the spot about how to teach that topic. But monitors are also there to make sure the teachers are teaching, because we have had complaints too that teachers are teaching topics the day before and the week before the exam. And obviously, if you do that, you'll have trouble with your children. The monitors are there to make sure the SBAs are being done at a quality that are going to give our children the maximum number of marks on that component of the exam. So those are some of the things that we have done. We are infusing ICT, and I'll end on this one unless Anisha pulls up another. We have in 193 technology-aided spaces in 41 of our high schools, with key features of a smart classroom and 30 dedicated smart classrooms. The first smart classroom in this country was at North Rheinveld, opened in 2014. The archives will show you. And it remained the only smart classroom in this country until I came back into office in 2020. And after then, we've had 30 dedicated smart classrooms in the country. And we're expanding, we're doing more. We're trying to get entire schools. The St. George's School of Sciences, every class has a smart board. All students have laptops. It's their first term in being. They all have Teams and email accounts. Their teachers are mandated to send their work and homework onto those accounts. And guess what we found? St. George's School of Sciences, which you know St. George's, we renamed it, but St. George's. All of the children passed mathematics in the first term, and 60%, all of the children passed with 60% or more in the first term. So I'm telling you, once the investment is made, our children can do well and can do much better. I will end on the school enrichment program, which is where we want every single high school child to exit high school with exposure, not necessarily a certificate from CXC, but exposure to at least one sport, one musical instrument, one foreign language, one TVET subject, a strong sense of volunteerism. And we have so far engaged 20,599 children in these extracurricular activities. The sports that are being offered are archery, cheerleading, badminton, dance, basketball, table tennis, chess, track and field, cricket, swimming, football, lawn tennis, golf, karate, volleyball, table tennis. And the musical instruments so far are choir, drum, guitar, keyboard, recorder, steel pan, saxophone, clarinet, trumpet. As you may be able to imagine, our biggest challenge is getting people to instruct in these areas, because we now started a music program at CPC, but we don't have trained teachers, so we're calling them instructors. Along with this school enrichment program, President Ali expressed his vision to have schools, once space permitted, spaces where sport facilities can be established. And so tarmacs and what we call sport facility, tarmacs where you have like basketball courts and volleyball courts and those kinds of things are being built across the country as we speak. So we have expended so far across the country. So I say we loosely, it could be the regions. $68 million at nursery, 69 at primary, and $501 million at secondary, reaching a grand total of 639. But that program only started when the president announced that at the opening of the Zealot Primary School, which was late last year. We also intend to have, and like I said, those tarmacs are to accommodate the basketball courts and volleyball courts and tennis courts and so on. I was really happy when I went to Region 9 a few weeks ago and I saw being built, and I understand since then it was finished and someone sent pictures, so I wish we had the picture to pull it up. Basketball court being built at Aishalton Secondary. At Aishalton Secondary, where I had hitherto heard that we shouldn't do basketball in the hinterland because basketball required tall people. So from the short people, I telling the tall people, we coming after you because we don't believe that anything should hinder anyone, and we believe everyone should have opportunities that everyone can participate in, and you will see people shining through on those who will be bigger stars because they don't have the Tana type height. But along with that are nursery playgrounds all across the country. Something people have been asking us for are the playgrounds you have become accustomed to, you know, the monkey bars and the slides and swings and seesaw and so on. And we're in the process of doing just that also, putting in playgrounds at all nursery schools where once space permits. And I say that and bring your attention to the East Street, what's the school? Winford Garden Nursery. You can't put a playground in there because there's simply no space. So once space permits, we are going to be putting a playground, the nursery type playground in, and the tarmacs. I'm going to end on that note and invite you to ask me any questions you have. And I know they're all going to be happy, lovely questions reflecting our accomplishments over the last year. And I'm going to invite our CEO and DCEO, Mr. Saddam Hussein. Oh, that's the tarmac at Aishalton that is not yet finished because it has to have some more colors for basketball at Aishalton Secondary. Do you know where that is? So if you know where the map is at the bottom of the map. So this is not development in Georgetown or Region 4 or Region 3 or where you can see. Places you never even dreamt of, places you have no clue where they exist. This is the kind of work we're doing all across the country. Chief Education Officer Saddam Hussein, Deputy Chief Education Officer Tiffany Harvey. I don't see the permanent secretary, so I'm assuming she isn't here, but I will invite the Deputy Permanent Secretary, Gita Ramnarayan, to join me on the stage, on the head table. No, I think I could stay here. Or, I don't know. Center? Okay, because of, yeah, I need a chair. Sorry, Saddam. Just leave. Just make sure.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the media, I already see Svetlana has her hand up. Thank you very much, Minister. The question and answer segment will follow usual protocols. You're allowed 2 questions and a follow-up. Please state your name and which media house you're from, and proceed with your question.
Hi, good day. Svetlana Marshall for the news, for News Source. Minister, you started off your presentation talking about universal secondary education. Could you say how far along is Guyana in achieving this with the addition of the 37 secondary schools. And just for clarity, those schools are all completed as we speak. And how many more secondary schools would be required for us to achieve this target? That's the first question.
So no, they're not completed. Yesterday I turned the sod, or day before, for Caneville Secondary. And these are big schools, 1,000 children schools, so they're not gonna even be completed in this year, I don't think. So a lot of them are not. A lot of them are slated for completion this year. For example, Christchurch, St. Mary's, Hosororo, Quebana, Tushin, Warramuri. No, I'm not sure if Warramuri is slated for completion this year. All the Region 9 schools are slated for completion this year, so that would give you 7. And they're in various places of completion. For example, when is Tushin expected to come in? End of February. So they're not all ready. The second question is, so that's why I said built or being built. The second question is, would this bring in universal secondary? As far as we have one school more we need in Region 3, around the Vreden Hoop Crane area. You would be surprised to know we have the drawing, we have gone out to bid, that entire process is finished. We can't find land. So we've had three different locations for about 3/4 of a year. We've been trying to find land to put this school down on. We have even explored and may very well land back on that position of taking down the old Vreden Hoop School and building not the nice design one that we have, but whatever it is that we can build there. Now you might ask me why go there and not somewhere else, because that is actually a catchment. Like Vreden Hoop Crane, that area is very large, so they need a secondary school there. As far as we know, we don't need any in Region 5. But you know, sometimes I was in Region 9 over, I think, just end November or early December. And Upakari was being built as an extension to the primary school. And I didn't know that. And I said, well, why are you building we're not doing primary tops anymore. This is not something we want to do. Why are you doing that? And that's when the decision was taken, oh, this shouldn't be a primary top. This should be a full secondary school, albeit a smaller one. So I might say yes to these 38. And then we might go somewhere and find out, you know, it would make sense to put down a secondary school here. The hinterland is very complex in terms of where children are and sometimes what cultures would allow. So you might think we put a secondary school here and parents would say, no, we won't send our children for various other reasons. So it should bring us to 100% universal secondary education and access. But like I told you, the UN has said we have universal primary education, but we're not stopping. If we go to a small place that needs a primary school and children are walking for 4 miles, we'll build a primary school. Recently, President Ali walked through Fowles. You know, that's what he's known for. Meeting people, hearing their views, not being lazy about performing his duties, really getting out there and making sure that his service meets and touches people. And he went to Fowles, and people on the ground raised with him that they wanted a primary school. Officers immediately said, the immediate or the first response was, we don't think so because there are 2 schools in Enmore. But when we checked it, because these areas are expanding, the government is giving a lot of house lots and a lot of young professional lots and so on to people. We now need 273 children from Fowles are going to various other schools. So I think it's a good place to put on a primary school because those 273 children will grow into 400 quickly once they have a place closer to home. So I would never say we stop building, but I think this is going to bring us to 99.9.5% universal secondary.
So by the end of the year?
No, some of them. Caneville is what they told me, 14-month project. I'm trying to remember. So it's going to roll over into next year, but it's going to be substantially built. Where there are large schools, the projects are longer.
Before you continue, Svetlana, can you just stand when you're asking your question? Thank you.
But okay, it's not necessary. But yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, I think they want you for the cameras, not
Yeah.
for me, right?
Yeah, for the cameras. It's for the cameras.
My second question, Minister, we've seen in some sectors, for example, the health sector, reports of brain drain. I've also received reports of teachers migrating. Could you say how many teachers are in the education system? How many teachers would have resigned for 2024, if possible, if that figure is available? Is there a shortage of teachers? And if so, what category, primary, secondary, nursery, and in which region? Thank you.
Yeah. So here's the thing, Svetlana. They had an ice skater named Svetlana too. You know that? Were you named after her? Oh, after the journalist. Okay. So I hear that. It's a very sensational, sexy thing. I see it on talk shows and it occupies people and so on. Our stats are very different. We're not finding, so we have people in this room, and I'm looking straight at you so I don't give away who I'm talking about, who migrated to the Bahamas to teach with their spouses who were also teachers, and they're back here. So our statistic is actually very different. What we're finding is people broke their contracts and so on to go and teach, and they are somewhere else because they offered better conditions and so on. And then they come back and say, look, we're sorry, we left, we want to connect back our service. How can we do that? So we're seeing that. I will also tell you this, we had, when I came into office, we had just over 10,000 teachers. So if you were to look at the finance paper, I'm not very proficient at reading the finance books, but if you were to look at it, you'll see probably just over 10,000 or under 10,000 teachers. Under 10,000 teachers. We now have close to 15,000 teachers. Here's the other story about that, and you can test this publicly, which is why I'm not afraid to say it in front of all these cameras. A lot of private school teachers are asking to come over to public school because the conditions are better, the salary is better, of course, their security of tenure is much, much better because it's very hard to knock off a teacher. And so we're seeing that. We also had less than 100 non-graduate teachers resigning last year, which is not any different from what we see every year. So we don't have as a record any mass movement of teachers. Every year, teachers retire. Every year, teachers resign, sometimes for their own thing. And every year, teachers unfortunately die. And we're not seeing any rise in those numbers. But we are seeing risen figures in the people who want to come into teaching. I also have people wanting to leave health to come over to us. We have people who are who want to leave other administrative public service posts to come over to teach. And now that they can train online while they work, they're actually doing that. The other thing that was very, very attractive is when I came into office, if you were a teacher in training, you were getting $10,000. Is it 10? I think it was actually less than 10. The $9,000 and something as a stipend every month. Now every single person while they're training is getting the salary of a starter teacher, which is over 90,000. Well, it's probably over 100,000 now, right? So that's very attractive for people. Chief Education Officer is going to give you some other stats.
Okay, just to point out, on the coast, more than 75% of the schools that we have are currently overstaffed. So the Ministry of Education over the last 2 months has had to engage in a significant rationalization of staffing on the coast. Just to know that. Additionally, I can substantiate the information that in terms of resignation. Any teacher who resigns must send that letter to the office of the CEO for approval to resign, if you're including before retirement and for retirement. So the figure that we're giving you is absolutely accurate. It's less than 100 teachers who are non-graduates who would have tendered their resignation. Thanks. The figure is far less than that. Non-graduates, I thought that might have been the thing. So non-graduates, yeah. The graduate teachers, those teachers with degrees, maybe masters and so on, it's even less than that. It's even very, very less than that.
Because logically, Svetlana, you invested all that time in studying, why would you resign? So it's a very small number. And so there's no shortage? No, that's all. Well, let's be careful with that. There's shortage of TVET teachers, right? Music teachers, PE teachers. TVET is really beating us bad right now because because of all that we've been doing, we've been interesting more students in doing tech. You know, the other day I had some people over over Christmas over in my home, and we were joking about how long ago, which would be when I was in high school, that wasn't that long ago, the TVET might not have been as celebrated as it is now. TVET was one of those subjects, boy with a T-square, I ain't sure how bright he is. That's not what's happening now. Like, I am watching students choose TVET. Places like Queen's College didn't have a high uptick of TVET. They did sciences because that's where people thought, you know, you could go into careers that would make large sums, doctors and so on. Now you're seeing in that school large numbers of children choosing TVET. So we have shortages in some of those areas. But we believe we can pick it up. We used to have shortage in agricultural science, and then that changed. We don't have that anymore. But we don't have music teachers. We don't have enough music teachers. We don't have enough coaches. We don't have enough TVET. What else is foreign languages for sure. So there are some shortages in some areas.
Good morning, Minister. Milton Granham for Starbuck News. Can you say how the ministry is ensuring that low achievers at the NGSC are getting a quality education in their schools, and how do you measure that? Also, can you say if liquidated damages were applied last year by the MOE? The Christchurch Secondary School is 10 months behind schedule.
Could somebody ask Shani about the liquidated damages? She didn't. You know about the liquidated damages? Okay. So, the question is very valid. And it's something we've been examining actively. What happens to the students who clearly at NGSA didn't meet, or from their NGSA results, didn't meet the benchmarks the ministry has set as being what we want students to have exiting primary school. But they go into a secondary school, and then we give them the same work load and same content as the students who clearly met the benchmark. In other words, the student who got pupil who got, say, 40%, will go into high school currently and get 12 subjects: maths, English, social studies, science, NT science, what else they do? French, music, geography, Spanish, home economics, agricultural science, PE, music. That's what a first former does. I'd say a QC or a Bishop's or a Christchurch, right? And then the 40% student, you ask them to do the same thing. You're almost setting them up for failure. So what have we done? We have spoken to CXC. We had started this conversation back in 2014, and it wasn't advanced. So we sat down with them in a very structured way. And we've actually trained teachers to do something called CCSLC. which is CC Caribbean Certificate Secondary Level Competence. We've trained over 800 teachers, and we intend to begin rolling it out on Monday coming to 72 schools. Now, what is this program? This is a program where you'll do math, English, social studies, science, one foreign language, most likely Spanish, IT, or digital literacy is what I think we're calling it, and one more. What's the TVET? Either agricultural science or home economics or one of those. That's a competency-based program. So you do that to grade 9, get your so you work on the mathematics principle until you become competent in it. Several Caribbean countries whose names I have, so I'd be happy to pull those up. For you, I know for sure Grenada, Antigua, pull up your document for me. And it's being run by the Caribbean Examinations Council, are doing CCSLC. And that's what we want to do. And it's going to be offered at some point across the country. But we've begun with these 72 schools. It's Anguilla, Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Martin, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad and Tobago, and Turks and Caicos. Like I said, we had started this conversation in when Dr. Jules did it, because Jules was the head. And I was very disappointed we didn't carry it on, because since then this has been a problem that we all know. So we are trying to make sure, first of all, that we make sure everyone can read at a level of by grade 4 at an appropriate age level. So we're trying to eliminate the problem permanently. But for those who exist now, we are going to introduce this program, which is a competency-based program, to try to make sure that we don't fail the children further. And I say we don't fail them further. If there's a system, if you went to primary school, your mother carried you to nursery 1, nursery 2, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, 8 years of primary school, and you can't read at the end of that, we have collectively failed them. I'm not in the classroom, but we could dress it up however we want, and that can't continue happening, which is why I spoke about something we haven't even launched as yet, which is the literacy intervention. But while that has happened, we need to fix, support the children who came out of that system already, and that's what we're doing. On the issue of Christchurch, and I'm seeing an extension was given, yes, but he's asking, yeah. So no, liquidated damages was not applied because an extension was given because of a change in design, apparently. So let me tell you, because I see you're very interested in Christ. Did you go there? No, my other colleague is going. Ah, he went there. But I'm glad. I like seeing that when people are interested in and invested in a school. I'll tell you, I went walking in Larry Trait yesterday, or the day before, and I went into a pensioner's home, and she couldn't see because she didn't have her glasses on. So she said to me, "Oh, you're Priya Chan? Is when you're gonna finish Christchurch?" Because her daughter teaches at Christchurch. Because you sending she so far to teach. So trust me when I say this is something we want finished too. In fact, we want it finished so much that we started something new. We said we wanted 8 lots. So we're not giving one contractor, we're giving 8 contractors. And all y'all gonna work simultaneously and finish this school, right? So while you putting up wall, you putting up window, you putting up toilets, etc., etc. that didn't work because everybody had to wait on lot one. And lot one was the foundation. And lot one took long. So lot one was the small problem. And then we had a little change in design because the school is completely different from what it initially was. And so these are some of the challenges we have. Listen, we didn't, I want every school built yesterday, but I want schools to be built safely, and we are dealing with contractors who bid publicly. So we don't get to, I have personally sat down almost every month with, or if not every month, every 6 weeks with every contractor and consultant on every project. Of course, with the technical team, because I don't know technically about these things, but imploring them to understand the urgency of finishing these schools. And sometimes people bid for things they can't do. We have that experience at Guyana as well as Tushen. Can't finish it, so then we have to find another contract, and that's a process. And, these are some of the challenges we have, but we can't wring our hands. We got to get past them.
All right, just to follow up, you spoke about the parent who said that her daughter is going so far, which leads me to my other follow-up question. Is there any consideration of the extra cost and dislocation that the students and teachers there face, and the extra costs and so on that they had to endure over the extended period?
But I don't think that's what a parent meant. That's your question. The parent meant she wants her daughter to come back, her teacher daughter, not a student, come back to closer. We had a stakeholder meeting at Queen's College Auditorium when the school went up in flames. And every decision that was taken in the majority by the parents of the school, because we had other options. We could have put these children in, I think it was at Lodge, which is close. We could have divided the school and put some here and some there, and the parents unanimously almost chose. So I did whatever the parents want because we had the options. The parents chose to keep their children in one place with one set of teachers at CPC, which is actually very, very good physically for accommodation. Like I said, we expect this to finish by March of this year. So.
Go ahead.
Shamar Musa, Guyana Chronicle. Minister, you spoke about Caribbean countries asking how they can benefit from Guyana's teachers training program. Can you say which countries have asked thus far, and how do you see us possibly implementing something like this to share with the Caribbean?
Right. So I have had a conversation with the Minister of Grenada. Minister, he has two first names. Or two last names, depending on how you look at it. And you said we have had conversations with Barbados. We have had other conversations with other countries also, but how can they benefit? It's an online program. So we would have to work out, and let me just say very clearly, those conversations were not advanced far. They were initial forays into, I wonder if this is something we can benefit from. And it's an online program, so we would have to work out how teaching practice is done in those countries if we were to use this. But we are studying, 29,000 and something Guyanese are studying in other universities in other countries, and it works. So online can work regardless of where we are. But we have had those quiet investigations, initial forays into the.
Listen, Alopatwa Newsroom. Minister, could you address the issue of bullying in school, and could you also say if there has been an increase when compared from last year to 2023?
So we don't have an increase in reports. What we have is in 92 of our schools, we have placed guidance and counseling officers in 92 schools out of our 116 schools. So some schools where we had thought there was a need, They have 2, and some schools have 3 guidance and counseling officers, which are counselors. You may also remember, I want to touch wood when I say that we were having some trouble at Campbellville Secondary. Repeatedly made the news, and you would notice that has been very quiet for an extended period of time. And that's because, I went to the school, we met with the parents, and we took certain decisions. Dr. Hudson is helping us lead off on the interventions there, including using parents as sort of wardens. I don't know if I want to call them wardens, but supervision in the school was one of the issues. The school getting children early, getting children motivated. So to answer the short answer is we haven't seen an increase in bullyism, but we do have in the world more avenues by which people can be bullied, and that means everybody has a smartphone. Everybody has access to all kinds of social media forums. And so bullying is not only in the classroom. We have had the various complaints of the various forms of bullying and abuse of children, but we haven't seen an increase in it. That's what I'm saying. When you put together large numbers, in fact, we have, we're going to launch very soon something that Olato Sam had begun to work on, that he didn't complete it when he died. So we are completing it with the assistance of Anne Green, former head of the Child Care and Protection Agency, as Dr. Green, sorry, Saddam told me, I love her. But we're trying to put together a full strategy that involves parents signing contracts and some other things that we want to test before we put out fully. By test, I mean consult on. Because the one thing we have not had input here, which Olato didn't get to do before he died, was to take it out for consultation. And when you have so many stakeholders, we have to consult around some of these policies, because a successful implementation would involve all of us. And so we can't just hand out a policy without first checking with those stakeholders. So that consultation is going to begin shortly. And by shortly, I mean almost immediately after the budget process finishes.
During the Raffle MTV News Update, Minister, can you say how many migrant children is in the education system? How many was enrolled in 2024, and is this an increase from 2023? And which region are they spread out?
Okay, so the Ministry of Education, under the School Support Services, headed by a Deputy Chief Education Officer, has a unit called the Migrant Unit. We are one of the few ministries in the Caribbean that actually has such a unit. We have in our database 4,000, I don't call the hundreds and the tens number, but a little bit more than 4,000 migrant students registered. We have continued to register students as long as they make themselves available to the school, or if we find these students within communities. We are one of the few countries as well who do not require any kind of documentation. So a migrant student does not have to get a birth certificate. They simply turn up to a school close to where they live, and what we do is we enroll them into that school. Whilst enrolled in that school, they benefit from all the things which have been outlined by the Honorable Minister at that school. The cash grant, textbook, and a host of other things. What we have found is, of course, that there is a language issue. And so we have currently more than 40 classes after school classes where these migrant students are being taught English as a second language. We also have a new curriculum that caters for the migrant students. We've gone so far in that our deputy chief exams, our examination unit also prepares the exam in Spanish for students, for the migrant students. There's a lot more to be done, but I take the question to give me a chance to talk about that a little bit. But it's about 4,000 students on roll that we have across the country. Thank you.
Do you provide a figure for 2023? Was it an increase?
There was not an increase. There was not an increase. And I remember because we actually did a bar graph for the Honorable Minister, and it didn't spike. There was nothing there. It was the same amount that we've had from since 2022. We've had that amount going across. We've not had any spikes.
But I'm very happy to say that we've seen children from that migrant population, because we are not school and health services. We don't stop anyone from receiving publicly, but we've seen students from that migrant population topping at our NGSA, topping at CSEC, topping at the University of Guyana, topping at GTI, and so I like to see people as human beings, and particularly children as children, and that's how we treat with them in the school system.
My other question is in relation to security for schools. Can you say if, in terms of where the ministry is achieving like security for all of the schools, and with the construction of all of these secondary schools, does that include like a guard up?
Are you nervous? Or you speak fast like that? So the policy of the government is that every school should have security. But remember, in the regions, because education is decentralized, in the regions that would fall under the regional government, which would be the Regional Democratic Council, who reports to the local government ministry. Of course, yes, our policy is also that we have responsibility for Georgetown in the Ministry of Education. And our policy is that we have guard huts and facilities for washroom at the various places that guards exist. We have had some challenges, and it's a constant, it shouldn't take up that much of our time. I mean, if you sign a contract to give us service, you really should. But we get calls all the time. There's nobody at this school, or we're supposed to have 6 guards and we have 1. And that's a constant issue that we have to deal with. Needs almost a full-time person addressing that. And that really has to be, stuff we look at.
Minister, I know budget is next week, and based on my sources, the University of Guyana would have a requested $14 billion to cover its operational costs, both at Turkine and Tain. Could you say if it's likely that university would receive this on the cash grant initiative? Could you say if there were parents of children in the public system and even the private system who are listed to receive the cash grant that didn't show up? And I'll just ask those two.
Yeah. Which cash grant you talking about?
Sorry, the We Care cash grant.
Right, because the government has given so many cash grants. I can't tell you what would be in the budget, Svetlana. I am the Minister of Education. Hardly ever knows.
Is that a reasonable sum? 14 billion?
Is anything reasonable for education? I'd say we need 40 billion, but we have to work within a budget, just like in your home. What we do is put up ideals, and then we have professionals who have trained in the ministry, have trained in the field of economics and state planning, who work in the Ministry of Finance, to put together a budget that will balance, that is going to give every sector a little bit or a lot, depending on their capacity to spend it, depending on the types of services they give, and they get to make that decision, not because, and I could tell you, not in this government or in any other government does anybody get everything they want. It's just like in your house. You got a shopping list and you got to decide what's the priorities. What I can tell you is that this government has shown repeatedly, we've moved from spending 2% of our budget on education to spending a consistent 15 to 17% of our budget on education from 92 to now. We haven't changed that. Education has always been a priority. Making the University of Guyana free has been something the government worked on, looked at, and wanted to do. Last year, when the University of Guyana said because of our November announcement, they were $1.2 billion short of what they needed to finish the 6 weeks in the year, we gave it without hesitation. I'm not sure that I don't have the information, and I'm not at liberty to give you information I don't have. I don't have the jurisdiction to tell you what's going to be in the budget. But I will also say that these things are assessed by professionals who make comparisons. It's not done in a vacuum with other countries and other services, and themselves look at, what would be best. We also have, which we have openly spoken to the Vice Chancellor about, we have to look at efficiency at the university too, right? So it's not just what you get, is how you spend what you get and whether we're getting full value for money. You have people in this room, and again, I'll keep my eyes on you, who have complained that they have not been able to go to a single in-person class, that late in the term, classes had not even begun. So we also have to look at some of those. These are our young people we're talking about, trying to get a university education right here. And so it's a combination of giving and getting. I think, so these are deeper conversations we have to have. I don't think the university has not been examining itself. I believe they have, because I have had those conversations with the Vice Chancellor. And I think they have also been looking at ways they can make improvements. And I know they try very hard to accommodate students, given their own limitations and so on. On the cash grant, where the parents didn't turn up, very few. It's a very successful cash grant. And the way we do it is so how do we even get the list? The teacher first provides her register. That is then reviewed by the headmistress against the register. That is then submitted to the regional education department. And this process starts, which is why it comes over so smooth. That process starts in March and April, although we're delivering in June and July, right? It then goes to the regional education officer, and they sit down with all the registers and make sure nobody didn't put in anything, right? Then it comes to the Ministry of Education, who then goes through our lists of another verification process based on what our planning unit has as numbers in each school. Then the person has to present themselves to the teacher. So Svetlana went to go to, you want to guest campus and you run to Region 3 to pick up a grant. The teacher never saw you, she won't give you. Plus your name is not on this list. And then you have to sign with identification, or the person with an authority through authorization has to have the information like your ID and so on, right? So it's a very vetted process. The biggest complaints I've had, so I had that last week. I was on a walkabout somewhere and somebody told me they were in the hospital and couldn't get it. No, she said she was sick and couldn't get it. So I said, well, why didn't you send someone? And she said, oh, she didn't think, whatever. I said, but you could have sent some. And then after that process, we have a mop-up where we go back to every region and say, if you didn't get a chance to make the 3 or the 5 days that we were sharing there, you can come back. to this time, at this time. And so most parents do. The biggest complaint I think we get is, which is why you'll see an ad out, if it hasn't gone out, you'll see an ad out within the course of the next couple of hours or by tomorrow, where nursery children have to register. We asked them to register by which date this year? March 28th. Now, you gotta register because we're not paying you if you're not on a register. It doesn't matter that your child is in school and is going to be in school in September. Now, a lot of parents don't make that deadline date. They go afterwards, which means they didn't get on the register, and that becomes a little bit of a problem, but not very small number.
Just one final question for me. I know during the industrial action with the
Very
teachers,
interested in education, and we're very glad about that.
there was the issue of learning loss to some extent. Could you say how the ministry would have been able, since the full return to normalcy, would have been able to address that, and our students now on par with where they should be?
Good. So for the primary school, what we did in primary was we consolidated the curriculum. So we went through from grades 1 to 6, and we took out all the stuff we didn't think children needed absolutely to do in that grade, because they were going to do it in another grade. So it gave us a good chance to, there's somebody talking somewhere, gave us a good chance to look at the curriculum to see if everything was as relevant as we had it. When you and I were going to school, I mean, you're a lot younger, but when we were going to school, we had to learn every Commonwealth country, their capital, their head of state, their import, export, currency, and all kinds of things. Do you still need to do that now when you can Google it? So we're in a different world, and we had to look back at our curriculum. We consolidated the curriculum. We said very clearly we were going to test children up to a grade 5 level because the lost years simply could not be recovered. For example, the children who are currently in first form or grade 7 came out of school in grade 2. So this batch that's writing came out of school in grade 1, and they spent 2 years out of school. They went back in at grade 3. They lost a lot of foundation. So we said we were testing up to a grade 5 level and then on a consolidated curriculum. We then went a whole set of lengths. We put Quiz Me questions on a website. We've just produced a beautiful document that I wish I had when my kids were writing, of concise notes for social studies and science. We've given all the textbooks children need to the public school, to our public school children. And that sounds, because I saw people say, oh, we always used to get textbooks. That's not true. You always used to get social studies for our children and science around us. But children didn't get Guyana or country or home. They didn't get graded math. They didn't get a process of learning. Our package is about 17 books for grades 5 and 6. And they're the books that the private schools are using, which is why in our results, you saw for the top 5 schools, more children coming from public schools than from private schools last year. We're very pleased about that. Not private school children are also Guyanese children, but I'm saying one of the impacts of the results was that. And so we saw a holding of our results. If you were to go look over the years, and it's published online and so on, what percentage of children passed mathematics, passed English, passed social studies, passed science, you'll see we've actually been doing better post-COVID, which, like I said, defies the predictions. We have about, we have not gotten 0 in dropout. We haven't 0 rated our dropout rate, but it is not anywhere close to what was initially predicted by the various IFIs. I think it's under 10% this year, which is too high, but far less than what I see some new coming politicians claiming that it is. Somebody said it's 50%. I'm still wondering. Same person that told us 33 is not bigger than 32, so I didn't bother too much with it until the Starbuck News started using it as a fact, and we had to write to say, where are you getting this from? Because that is not so. But we have to bring that down further to 0. We want to see 0 child leaving school before they should. But we're not anywhere close to what was predicted and what I know other countries are are struggling with, that kind of learning loss and early school leaving.
Thank you, Ms. There have been calls for primary schools to concentrate on the core subject of maths, English, science, and for social studies to be set aside for the NGSA. Can you say what are your views on this? Also, while we're on NGSA, can you say if there are any changes, any plans to change the format of NGSA for this year? Also, the English intervention program has been successful or can be deemed successful in many Georgetown schools. Can you say if it will be implemented in other schools, and if so, how? I went too fast?
So you're talking about yourself and give me back an answer. To answer you, no, there's going to be no change to NGSA this year. There's going to be no change to NGSA next year because these are the kids were the COVID children. I think we have 2 more years for the nursery ones to come through. So we don't have any change to NGSA this year or next year. I have heard the call for core. Trinidad just does only English and mathematics. I think Barbados too just does English and mathematics. I like our children doing a little bit of all and getting some exposure to, we live in a very diverse country. How are the Georgetown children going to learn about vaqueros in Region 9 if we drop social studies? And how are the Region 9 children going to learn about diyas of the Hindus if we drop social studies? I think these things have value. Do we go too deep? Those are questions we've been asking. Is our science too deep? Do we need to be testing so far? Or could we touch on these topics at a more age-appropriate? The NSERD, which is the building we're in, the nerve center of the ministry, they have been constantly examining some of those issues. There's no plan to change right now. Chief Education Officer wants to say something.
Just 2 things. One, I think Minister has hit it on the head. The Ministry of Education has started the process of, again, mapping, let's say, mathematics from grades 1 all the way to grade 9. I'll give you an example. Mathematics in grade 6, you do addition of fractions as a topic. You do that again in grade 7. You do that again in grade 8. You do that in grade 9. And then in many schools, you do that in grade 10. So there has to be a very accurate mapping of all the maths topics. And what will happen when we do that for maths and English and science and social studies, the amount of work that a student is required to do in each grade, from grades 1 all the way to grade 9, it will be a lot less. So there is a core. In grade 1, you have to know these 4 things. The additional things, those can be spread out across the board. But if I can add to the conversation, I don't think that we need to look at the 4 subjects in primary school. There are 4 subjects. It's not more than that. English, of course, has comprehension and grammar and composition and so on. What we need to look at very carefully is in grade 7, and the Ministry of Education has started looking at this in terms of the number of subjects being done. So quite recently, we have started looking at those List C schools, those List D schools. It cannot be that you come into the school with a low grade and then you are subjected to do 13 subjects. So my alma mater is Shortville Secondary School. And I used my authority as CEO and I said to them, no. You're going to be doing 6 subjects that mirrors the CCSLC that the Honorable Minister has identified. Already, the students have expressed a degree of greater comfort because they get more time to study math and English and all these things. The teachers too have looked at this. So this is where we need to fix a little bit. 2 things. 1, spreading the curriculum a little bit better. And 2, looking at school on an individual basis, and I think the members of the media need to look at secondary schools in a little bit different way. Secondary schools are not all the same. Right? When we say grade, we're talking about size. That has a little implication for education policy. What is important is the listing of the school. So you cannot make a policy listing this for a list C school as with a list A school. So we got to look very, very carefully at that. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you very much, Minister.
Yeah, there's also, so you asked about this, if the success of the English program in Georgetown would be replicated. Did you mean math or you meant English? Math. Okay, because we are doing an English program. So the mathematics program is not Georgetown based. So I'll do both. But I think I saw Leon in the room, and I know I saw Padma, Sadhna, and I saw Mahendra, right? The mathematics program is not Georgetown based. It is across the country. Every single child is supposed to receive a calculator, a geometry set, textbook, graph book, past paper organized by topics. And all of these places, so there's a man named Villan Paris who is known to the math community. He's the monitor in Region 9, right? Savitri Pandey goes to Region 7. Leon himself, I think, does 2 regions. So it's not a Georgetown program. It's a countrywide program. So we expect to see some of those results. We are still in the process at this point, because I know parents may see and hear this and say, well, I haven't yet received my calculator and my geometry set. We're in the process of getting those out to you, particularly in some of the primary tops like in Region 1 and so on. The English program, I don't know, you know a lady named Mrs. Ingrid Fung? She's the matriarch of English in Guyana. We've hired her as a consultant to particularly do literature and English for CX, well, for CSEC. So she's literally going school to school and training teachers. Not in the large training that you come in here, we bring in all the teachers, we get a great headline, and then we send you back out and we don't know what's happening in these classrooms. She's going school to school, training teachers on the spot, and teaching so they get to see how she teaches, looking at the children's books, dealing with the children. We've also engaged Mr. Chase and Dr. Hatton. I don't know if you know those names. So he's actually a medical doctor who says he loves teaching and he's excellent. And they're going to Kingston, Dolphin. And they're dealing with the children at Kingston and Dolphin for us, separately from what we are doing. And I'm looking forward to seeing those results come August, because I believe the results for those 2 schools will be different. So we're trying a whole set of different things to see what works. And we kind of know what works. You got to teach. Yeah, well, teacher has to understand the topic. Children have to come to school, because that's another big problem. If you come to school 2 days a week and you miss 3 days a week, or you're late every day, you're missing a large number of instructional hours. So parents got to be a little bit more involved. Teacher has to teach, curriculum has to finish. Children have to come to school, and you'll pass these exams. And pass them well. So that's a very simple formula, but it involves so many people and so many variations that to get it right perfectly in 100% of our classrooms is always problematic, because of the number of people that are involved in getting it right.
Are there any more questions from members of the media? If that's all, Svetlana, do you have another question? You look like you had another one. Oh, okay. If that's all, thank you so much for being here today, and I hope you have a great weekend and the rest of the year.
Well, thank you all for coming, and of course, you can get us anytime outside of the press conference.
Oh, members of the media, we have some tokens for you for covering us throughout 2024, so please stay put. Thank you.